Marianne Taylor is a house detective who unravels the history of houses for a living. During her work, she became dismayed over the lack of appreciation for post-war properties, and the Brisbane Retro project was born. Marianne is here to tell us a bit more about her research into these surviving houses and share intriguing stories linked with their pasts. Marianne, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you on to hear about these homes. To start with, tell us a little bit about this project of yours.
Good morning. The project was about trying to capture some evidence about Brisbane's post-war homes, basically. So in my work as the house detective researching Brisbane's houses, I discovered that there was a bit of a lack of appreciation, I guess, for post-war houses in particular. So by post-war, I mean anything, say, built from about 1940 to 1980. And I stored away a bit of a thought that perhaps one day I could do a project on taking some photos and recording these houses as sort of examples as when they were built, so we could have that evidence to refer to down the track. Because obviously you can't save all these houses, and I'm not about stopping development or progress in that way, but it was just, they were disappearing so quickly in my suburb in particular that I wanted to somehow capture these beautiful, gorgeous old houses. And so that was the idea for the project. And then the Brisbane City Council had a round of grants advertised, so I applied for that and was successful at getting the Helen Taylor Research Award. And then I actually had to do some work, so that was a bit scary.
I just wondered, Marianne, because why not cover, pre-1940 homes as well? Is it because, are they sort of protected?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Why not cover the pre-1940 homes too? Are they protected? Is that why you sort of started at 1940?
That's right, yes. So pre-1946 houses have some level of protection in Brisbane, and I think they are probably a little bit more appreciated by people in general as well. So it's really these later houses that a lot of people, they think they're a bit old-fashioned or a bit too retro. But my point too was that there was a time too when people thought our beautiful Queenslander homes were old-fashioned and daggy as well. So I sort of want to capture this information for the future, I guess, as well, in case anyone's interested.
So how did you go about it, Marianne? Where did you start? And what was the reaction of people when you put the word out?
The reaction was amazing. I was absolutely blown away. Here I was thinking that I was one of only a few people that were interested in this era. And as soon as the word got out, I was inundated with people who wanted to show me their houses or their grandparents' houses. And via social media in particular, a lot of people really got on board with the campaign to uncover these gems of Brisbane retro houses. And a lot of people were really passionate about their own houses, which quite surprised me. And a lot of people were very proud of the fact that they had these amazing post-war homes. So it was a matter of then actually having to try and narrow down particular examples from the huge number that I was sent in. So here I was thinking I would struggle to find any intact houses, and in fact I ended up having to be quite harsh with my criteria.
Yeah. So what was your sort of criteria to try and narrow it down?
Well, my first idea was to try and get a representative example of different categories. So I wanted to have I didn't want to just focus on fancy architect designed wealthy homes. I wanted to look at a whole range of homes. And, the majority of people in Brisbane in the 50s and 60s weren't they didn't own these really amazing top-end, high-end homes. So I in particular wanted to look at some social housing examples as well, so some Queensland Housing Commission examples. And I tried to get a bit of a range of styles, designs, era as the first round of criteria. And then the second round of criteria was actually looking at how intact they were. So I wanted ones that were essentially as built, so that were very little changed from when they were first constructed, so that the evidence I was capturing could be tied to that era in particular, and I could look then at different building styles and building methods, and I would have a bit of a background history, a bit of a context for the houses and the evidence that I was recording. So it was a matter really of visiting quite a few houses. There were quite a few cups of teas and slices of cake consumed when I visited the houses, which was one of the best parts. Yeah. And then it was just a matter really of choosing ones that I thought were the best examples of their type of housing.
I bet one of the better parts of this job was uncovering the stories behind the houses, behind those closed doors. Do you have any that come to mind that you just, are just so memorable and interesting?
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. The personal stories that came out of this project when I was researching the history, the things that just can't be captured when you're researching, documents in an archive, they were some of the best. Was some of the best parts of the project, and I think there's a couple that come to mind. And the first one is one of the houses I researched at Tarragindi was an ex-Martyr prize home. So it was a prize home in 1964, and as part of the promotion, the pantry was stocked with tinned food. And the story goes that the guy that won this house actually only stayed in the house long enough to eat all the tinned food and then sold the house and moved on. And another fantastic story was a couple who built a house at Alderley, and they built it through the State Advances Corporation, which was the precursor to the Housing Commission. And as part of that, you could choose different add-ons you wanted for your house, and you were charged for each different extra feature you wanted. And they were going to charge this couple £5 to have a new outdoor toilet, an earth closet or dunny built in the backyard. And this couple didn't want to have that done, so they actually moved their old toilet from their old backyard toilet from their old house to their new house. So I thought I was very clever and named that Brisbane's first Portaloo. So that was quite an interesting story.
Oh, that's great. I mean, did anything surprise you in your research?
There were a lot of surprises. One thing that really surprised me was how long certain styles persisted for. So Art Deco is one example, and as a historian and in architecture, you tend to think of Art Deco as being 20s and 30s, but I actually found Art Deco styles and motifs being used all the way up into the 60s, so that really surprised me. And certain styles of houses were built for many decades as well. The other thing that really surprised me was the Housing Commission houses, to be honest. I always thought, and I think a lot of people do, that they tended to be cheap and nasty houses that were quickly built to house people after the war when there was that huge demand for housing. But in fact, these are some of the highest quality housing you'll find in Brisbane, particularly the ones from the 50s. And not only were they well built from good quality materials, they were actually a lot of them architect design, and they were cutting edge, a lot of the designs of the homes as well. So that was a real surprise, and the innovative new building construction methods they use. So one example of that is the poured concrete houses at Inala, which is the first time that was used for residential housing in Queensland, and it was as a result of trying to build these houses as quickly as possible and cheaply as possible after the Second World War.
Have you achieved what you set out to achieve?
I did, but it's an ongoing project, I guess. Part of what I wanted to achieve was raising awareness for this era of housing and the quality of the builds, and just sort of, I guess, trying to help people appreciate a bit more how significant they are in our architectural history. So I definitely did that with a few people. Even I think I can count my mum amongst one of those converts. But it's definitely an ongoing project, and I think that I'll probably will do another exhibition and release a book and that type of thing to try and really get the word out there a bit more. But I definitely achieved the goal of the grant, which was to record some of these amazing examples, and they're now there for posterity. So in that way, I definitely achieved the goal of the project.
So is that sort of what's next then, you think? A book and certainly perhaps showing off some of those other homes that didn't get a go this time?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. 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 That's right. I think probably there'll be a Brisbane Retro Part 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. There's so many amazing houses, and it's that time frame now where the people that built these as newlyweds in the 50s and 60s are passing on, and so they're coming onto the market, and you're always seeing new houses. And of course, with development pressure, they're often on larger blocks and are getting split for new housing as well. So they're at much greater risk of demolition. But so there's always examples there ready to be captured. So I think probably there'll be more exhibitions, and one day maybe even a book.
Fantastic. Well done. It's just a great initiative. Marianne, thank you so much for chatting to us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Coming up next, we're going to get a preview of our next live auction for you. This one, we're back in Sydney. This is at Cecil Hills.